Assalamu alaikum. Welcome again to another episode of PIPS Talks. I'm Ammara Zaheer, and the topic today under consideration is: Will China let Pakistan out of its sphere of influence? And where does Pakistan fits into the global ambitions of China? And what does entail for Pakistan foreign policy and economic future? To unpack these questions, we have with us Mohammed Amir Rana, who is a political economy and a security expert. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Mara.
I began my podcast with the question that how do you see that President Xi Jinping's global ambitions relate to Pakistan-China current relationship, and what does Pakistan stands to gain from it or lose from it?
Thank you, Mara. So, the Pakistan and China are celebrating their 75th anniversary of bilateral relations, and I think this is a very important moment when the both countries are basically reviewing their positions. And we have seen during last 5 to 6 years a little turbulence in the bilateral relation, and it happened first time in bilateral relations. And it may be during the last 1 decade the expectation being increased from each other, and the CPEC was a priority, and now it may not be as top priority as it was before. So this is the a very critical moment for the Pakistan, because the China is a rising power. Rather, China declared itself a global power. And when President Trump had visited Beijing, and what had happened, I think we had discussed in one of our podcasts, Amara, what had happened there. Uh, and this is significant that the Chinese character are very different from the Western superpower. The Soviet Union was a part of the Europe and the West, and they had a compatibility with the US even after the Second World War era. But China is purely a South country and is now going to be a leader of the North as well. So this is quite critical, and China needed uh, new credentials. New credential doesn't mean that is or qualify only to their economic part, the military or defense parts, but also they need something else which may compete with the European or the Western value system or the democratic norms. So they have come up with the several initiatives, and this is the President Xi Jinping, which has introduced several concepts like uh, the GDI, GSI, GCI, GGI, and all these initiatives being introduced from 2021 to up till now. And this is basically ensured the three major interest of China, and China see the world through these four initiatives. And this is first is about the development, the GDI, the Global Development Initiative. Then they have the security initiative. Then they also had a complementary initiative. Then GGI. So all these regimes basically reflect the worldview of a new global power. So these four major initiatives, from development, security to governance, I think these are the key characters that China want to develop. And this is Amara is also very interesting to watch that this wasn't the first time China had introduced these new initiatives. And before that, they had introduced the six characteristics of the harmony, and they had extracted from the Chinese experience. But then they faced a lot of criticism and deconstruction of these Chinese characteristics. So now they have come up with a completely new regime of initiatives, which they have tried to basically made it compatible with the Western values and add their own interest and their own concept of how they see the world. So I think this is very important, and there is a very little realization in Pakistan that what actually these four initiatives will manifest in the future. And if you are endorsing it, and you will have to review most of your at least the theoretical framework in your relation with the West. Let's see, it's a very interesting moment for Pakistan to be a neighbor of a new superpower, and how the Pakistan will behave. And certainly we will see that how the China will behave with Pakistan in their future, because the 75 year previously we had a very different types of the relations, and now it's a very different domain. Pakistan has experience dealing with the superpower since its inception with the US, and we were part of course, the C2 and CENTO. And but China is a superpower which is very uh, close to our borders, rather, it's a next door neighbor. So this is going to be very interesting to see that how the things will unfold in near future.
President Xi Jinping's proposals for Middle East are much talked about in the recent past. Are they compatible with Pakistan's vision, and if so, then how is it important for the regional stability in the Middle East?
Of course, this is of course a four-point vision introduced by the President Xi Jinping about Middle East is also a very important diplomatic move by China, and you will see that this is all talk about the resolution of the Palestine crisis, and about establishing a regional security order, and this means that China basically focusing on and just conveying message to the US that they will endorse the regional security order without the US intervention. And this is very critical for many of the Arab countries, that the reason that the China hasn't cleared yet what and how they conceive the regional order. There's a lot of ambiguity about this, the fourth point of the Xi Jinping, and especially in the context, the China has a very close relation with Iran, and even during the war, there was several reports were appeared, though China had denied that the China was supporting militarily or at least providing some technical support to the Iranian. So this is basically a much apprehensions being seen in Arab countries about this, the fourth pillar of this Middle East diplomatic framework. But Pakistan also, we have a 5 point agreement with China. It's not an agreement, rather the framework both agreed, and it was completely different from the their Middle East view, but somehow is echoes a few component of their commitment in this framework as well. So they also talk about the peaceful resolution, just end of the blockade of the Banai Hormuz, the Strait of Hormuz. So these are the common point. So far, there is no contradiction in the Chinese and Pakistani vision about Middle East, Iran and Pakistan, of Iran and US conflict which is going on. But there is still potential for little irritation between the both of the views. The reason that the Pakistan is basically involved in mediation on the behalf of the US and on behalf of the Iran. And if Pakistan's inclined towards more towards the US, of course the China will see it very uh, differently. I'm not saying this suspiciously. So, and in the Chinese problem and in their strategic thinking, they are, maybe they are very patient in their thinking, but they are also very suspicious, always remain suspicious if their ally or the partner do something which doesn't appear to be compatible with their thought process, or the thinking process. So this is, let's see how the things will evolve. But of course, the primary target of China is opening of the Strait of Hormuz, and which they are emphasizing. But Middle East crisis will not over after the ceasefire and the permanent truce between US and Iran. There's a multiple dimensions which will continue unfolding and creating the the crisis, and China most probably will have a different take on issues where the Pakistan will stand.
Kashmir was mentioned in a recent Sino-Pakistan statement. Why do you think China is still vocal about Kashmir?
China isn't very vocal about Kashmir. Rather, they haven't changed their position and they maintain the same stance that they endorse the bilateral negotiation, the settlement between India and Pakistan. And maybe we will have another discussion on it. So, what is the China's real position on Kashmir? And this is, of course, in Indian perspective, Kashmir is a three-party dispute for not for all the Indians, but many of their analysts they see as the three-party dispute. Uh, but this is very interesting, Ammara, that the China all the time keep ensuring Pakistan they will guarantee their territorial integrity and sovereignty. But at the same time, they keep insisting on Pakistan to talk with India and resolve their issue peacefully. So it seems very paradoxical at one point, uh, but this is also reflect that if there will be any strategic conflict between India and Pakistan, of course, the China will choose Pakistan side. But if something is happening on Kashmir, because it's a territorial dispute and which will bring China in the discussion and in dispute. And China right now is avoiding to get involved any other territorial disputes in its neighborhood, and their primary focus is so far is the Taiwan, and of course the second major focus would be all the territories which they claim been captured by the Japanese during First World War and Second World War.
In terms of security, what are the main concerns between China and Pakistan? What are the main sources of mistrust and trust between the two countries? And what is your take on it, sir?
Yes, this is really an important question. You know that the early friction between Chinese and Pakistani relations started on the issues of the internal security and issues related to terrorism. And even the Chinese ambassador in town, he had very vocally criticized the foreign minister Sarkar when he said that the president Xi Jinping had guaranteed that China will continue supporting Pakistan in war against terrorism, and if even if the few incidents of terrorism against Chinese interests or national happened in Pakistan. So it was very interesting, and then we had seen the few statements from Beijing, which shows a clear divergent views on the Pakistani views. And of course, the China is concerned about the security and safety of its citizen inside Pakistan. But this is a bit complicated issue, and Pakistan view on countering terrorism is a little different from the Chinese perspective. Chinese had evolved the framework zero tolerance against three evils they called. One first is the terrorism, second is extremism, third is separatism. And if you see the all this Shanghai organization is also uh, revolve around this core theme. So for Pakistan, Afghanistan is of course one of the major issue in Pakistan's city approach and the terrorist networks operating inside the country. And Pakistan has long partnership for against terrorism with the U.S., with the West, with NATO. And still, we have multiple level of the cooperation, coordination with the US on countering terrorism. And even when we are discussing this city issue between China and Pakistan, the EU special representative is in town, and they may be talking about on the evolving some common approaches on countering common security threats. So for Pakistan, Pakistan has a very diverse collaboration cooperation with from US to East Asia, from Middle East to China. So then there is this is the one issue in the global perspective, and second is in the domestic security, which China keep insisting that if you can't provide security to our national, allow us to secure our citizens in Pakistan and the critical sites, especially in Balochistan, where the Chinese are working to provide them the security. And Pakistan, of course, is considered to be one of the very sensitive, critical issue. Pakistan, during its 78 years of cooperation with the US, never allowed the US troops on ground. Rather, even though we had given the Bada Bear base, air base to US, but it was been disclosed after several years. Similarly, the Shamsi and Jacobabad base we had given during their campaign in Afghanistan, but it was cooperation was very limited to in the airspaces, and then the intelligence cooperation was a key component between the two countries. And Pakistan had refused several times to US that it would not allow troops in Pakistani tribal areas, and it was basically caused the first major drone warfare in modern history. So this is also very interesting, Amara, to discuss this all this drone new technology warfare or the uh, low air warfare uh, in this region. But this is a major concern. Pakistan hadn't allowed the US and not allowed the Chinese consultant or their boots on ground in Pakistan. So this is, I think, the one issue which they keep stressing, and even in the joint statement, and the China had very clearly mentioned in the joint statement where and Pakistani endorsed it that the China accept that Pakistan will take all uh, measures against terrorism, ensuring the Chinese security in orderly manner. So this was orderly manner was a reflection of that maybe there is a still a few disputes left, not dispute, maybe the little differences between the two countries to address.
This brings us to the last question of our podcast, that economically Pakistan has Uran project and China has its 5-year project. How compatible are these two projects, sir?
Yes, Amara, this is very important question because the we are listening the mantra about CPEC since last one decade, and but uh, Pakistan has achieved a little out of it, and Chinese expectation were even never met as they were expecting the from Pakistan. So it's I think. Very delicate issue between China and Pakistan, and now the CPEC economic cooperation has come on the uh, the number fourth. So this is, I think, the maybe the worrying aspect between our relationship, and the strategic and defense ties had again taken over our partnership. So all the focus in joint statements was on the strategic and defense collaboration, sovereignty, and diplomatic cooperation, evolving, developing compatibility with between the worldview of China and Pakistan. And they little talk about the CPAC, and they made many promises as usual, and except two projects being mentioned. One was the Gwadar port, which is of course a strategic port, and they will continue developing, enhancing cooperation for the Gwadar city and Gwadar port. And second was about the Karakram highway, that they agreed that it will be uh, uh, expanded, and maybe few alternative routes being launched in near future. And both projects are very strategic, uh, and they matter very much in the Chinese security and the strategic doctrine. So otherwise, the Pakistan was trying hard to win the ML1, the railway project. It was initially it was a 6 billion, then the cost reached to 8 billion project, and of course, Pakistan need a modern railway tracks in the country. But Chinese were a bit apprehensive whether Pakistan wouldn't be able to pay back the money, or they may not be to bring their railway system in Pakistan, because this is also railway is also very strategic part of the communication, or is very important in each country's strategic and security framework. So this is maybe there was a few apprehension. They haven't extended that support, and Pakistan Railway is now had launched its own initiative for the rehabilitation of its tracks. So it's also a millions dollar project, and interestingly, a major part of these railway rehabilitation tracks will go to Chinese firm, but it will be purely a Pakistani money, which of course the Pakistani will pay to Chinese companies. And this is also very interesting. Though we got the $28 billion from the Chinese CPEC, uh, but uh, at the same time, the many Chinese firms are working in Pakistan on the projects which are not part of CPAC, and these are huge and $1 billion projects like the Amir or the Bhasha Dam, Ghazi Brota. So there's several projects which are $1 billion projects. So Chinese are getting much benefit advantages for their economic engagement in inside Pakistan, and Pakistan in terms of CPAC gain very little. Maybe we can discuss sometime later that it may be there was a mismatch of perception on the both sides. It may be the Pakistani bureaucracy. It may be we were a bit overambitious. It may be our balancing act with the US. It may be the Chinese expectation to generate the money and to win the contract out of the way, as they did in Africa and East Asian countries. So there's many ifs and buts we need to talk about in future. But one thing is clear, that economic cooperation is getting uh, less priority in our bilateral relations, and defense and strategic cooperation is on the top. And this is very important for the China, not only a regional context, or the tool they can use, that Pakistan cannot go deep into the US strategic trap. So this is maybe the primary purpose. And Pakistan, of course, will continue struggling, balancing between the US and China in future.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an insightful and in depth discussion. You have certainly given our views food for thought. Please keep thinking until then, and please like and share and subscribe the channel. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, Amara.